Hey guys, we're going to look at this video today. It's by Greg Bonson explaining the problems of philosophy as it relates to dualism. And dualism is a philosophical view that there are material and immaterial realities. As Christians, we're dualists, but we can account for the material realities and the immaterial realities because of the Christian God. And what you're going to see in this video, as he explains, is that unless you start with the Christian God, you can't bring any coherence to this philosophy. So just take a look at it. It's worth the time investing, because you're going to encounter this when you are talking to people in the streets. They're going to have a dualistic idea, but they're not going to be able to explain why. So take a moment and check this out. I think it should help you. All right.
But what about worldviews like dualism and religious worldviews? How now can we deal with them? And so let's expand our outline further and try to talk about those possibilities. If we move away from the atheistic, materialistic, or naturalistic viewpoint to an outlook that's more like Plato's, a more idealistic worldview, what are we to say? Plato held that there's a physical world, this world of time and space, but he also believed there was a world of ideals, or ideas. He called them forms. We might say formulas. There was a world that is the rational essence of everything that we find in this world. So in this world, we run into Huey, Dewey, and Louie out on the lake. But in the other world, there's the rational formula, the ideal or the idea of duck. And that's why we call those three things out on the lake ducks, because they all are part of that idea or that formula of duckness. That's Plato in our modern world, well, throughout history too, but in our modern world, there are many people who say, I believe in the physical world, but I also believe in values. I believe that there are ideas. I believe in the laws of logic. I believe in the laws of morality. Okay, now you're defending the faith, not with the materialistic, atheistic naturalist. Like I say, he's a sitting duck. You can philosophically knock that out. But as you think about it, most of my arguments don't seem so good when you talk to the dualist, the person who says, oh, I think there's matter and ideas, matter and laws, matter and values. And you're right. Most of the criticisms that we would urge against the atheist don't work so well against Plato and the people today who say, yes, Virginia, there is a Santa Claus. That's what idealists are like in our day, right? They say, well, we live in a physical world, but we also believe that there's a spirit of goodwill that should animate men. Did I understand, right? Isn't that the end of the story? Yes, Virginia, there is a Santa Claus because there is goodwill by which we give children presents and so forth. There's more to this world than just matter. There's also goodwill. Well, I'm using a very philosophically unsophisticated illustration. But many of the people you talk to are unsophisticated dualists. They'll say, oh, I believe in the laws of logic, and so I don't have the problem with Dr. Stein. I think that we can have a debate, and we should follow the laws of logic, because I believe in the laws of logic. And I also believe that you can't win a debate by shooting people. So, Dr. Bonson, you can't expect me to accept your challenge to Dr. Stein you can't expect that you're going to win by challenging me. Show why I shouldn't shoot you to win this debate. That is, show me that there are moral absolutes, in which case you have to be a Christian. I believe that it's wrong to kill people, but I still don't believe in the Christian worldview. Now, we're not talking about, but I believe in some other religious worldview. I just believe that there's right and wrong. And I believe that there's logic. Let me strengthen your hand at this point, because many of you, if you're paying attention, are thinking, this shouldn't be difficult to refute at all. In fact, aren't we back up to 1 and 2? Here's somebody who says, oh, you can't refute me as being a materialist because I believe in immaterial values. I believe in the laws of logic. you're not going to have a hard time dealing with this, because the next question is what you've already thought of. You are better philosophers than you may have thought. Next question is, well, how do you bring those two together? What's the relationship between those two things? Now, on your view, there's matter. Where did it come from? And on your view, there are laws or values, immaterial things. Where did they come from? What are the possibilities? They're both eternal, so they can come from anywhere. One's eternal and the other isn't. Okay, let's look at both the possibilities. If they're both eternal, how did they ever get together? You might want to say, well, matter decided that it wanted to get married to ideas. Matter doesn't have any personality. It can't choose to do anything. So the way in which matter and ideals and values got together can't be on the material side of things. You say, well, then maybe ideas, values, and logic decided to bring them together. But ideas and values and logic are abstract. They aren't personal at all. You might be interested, just as a matter of historical curiosity, to know Plato's answer to this. Plato said, oh, there must have been a personal demiurge that brought them together. Plato knew very well matter and ideas would never get together on their own. If they're both eternal, then there must be some other eternal thing that is personal that brings them together. Plato also said, by the way, and I know that's only a myth. I have to resort to a myth because I don't have any philosophical explanation of how you can get things which have conflicting attributes together in one realm. Conflicting attributes: matter is particular, ideas are universal. Matter is contingent, ideas are necessary, laws are necessary. How is that which is universal and necessary somehow in fruitful contact with that which is particular and contingent? And so Plato said, I don't know, just grant me one exception to my philosophical rationalism. All I want is to appeal to mythology once, and then I can explain everything else. You see, that's the problem with all unbelieving thinking. They always want the one grand exception. Let me get started, and then I can argue against you Christians. And what am I teaching you to do? In essence, don't let them get started. Argue with them at the presuppositional level and say, I want to know on your presuppositions how matter and ideals, how matter and values ever got together and there's any relationship to them. If they're both eternal, then you would think you have two things which are on two different tracks, really, and there's no contact between them. So the only other alternative is to say one is more basic than the other, right? Okay, but if one is more basic than the other, which is which? If matter is more basic and ideals grow out of matter or develop, evolve, whatever, out of matter, don't you see we're really back to the first option we were looking at? Materialism. What you have here is just a more sophisticated version of materialism that says really laws and values somehow developed out of the material world. Well, if they did, how did that which is particular and contingent give rise to that which is universal and necessary? That's philosophical nonsense again. Well, it has to be the other way around then. It must be that the physical world developed out of the world of ideas, out of the world of forms and values. Well, how could ideas give rise to that which is non-ideal? How could ideas do anything? How do ideas develop into a physical world where there are trees and fish and clouds in the sky? I mean, that's just a preposterous philosophy. So in essence, what we're saying is any dualistic approach, any worldview that has both matter and non-matter is going to have to face up to the problem of its dualism. Why then do we have the two things interacting? Why in our experience do we have both matter and ideas? Both matter and values? Plato put it this way. The soul once existed in the realm of ideas. If you do an internal critique of Platonic philosophy, I hope I'm not pushing too hard on you right now, but you need to understand that last sentence doesn't make sense in terms of Plato's philosophy. He says the soul once existed in the realm of ideas. No, Plato. On your view, only the idea of the soul could exist in the realm of ideas, not the soul. And so, where does the soul exist? Plato is contradicting his own philosophy when he says the soul once had concourse among the ideas. And that according to him, the soul comes into the body and is there entombed for a period of time, and eventually the soul escapes and goes back to the realm of ideas. Plato says that that's why all philosophy is a longing for death, because all philosophy is a longing for the ideas, and that's where our soul will go when we're finally released from this body. But my question is, where did the soul come from? Is it eternal? Are there a lot of eternal souls? Are all of us little gods? What are you telling us, Plato? Where did the soul come from if it's not eternal? And if the soul existed at all, no matter where it came from, it couldn't have existed in the realm of ideas because the soul's not an idea. So how did the soul have concourse with the ideas? The very problem that Plato is trying to solve on earth is just now replicated in another realm, because he thinks he has two things, right? Ideas and the material world. The soul is supposed to be the mediator between these two. But the soul can't be the mediator between the two because the soul's not an idea. What do you do then? Plato said, I can't account for this. All I can do is tell you a story. I have this mythology of the soul coming into the body, and it comes in remembering the ideas. I don't know how it knew the ideas, but it comes into this world remembering the ideas, and that's how values and ideas get in contact with our physical body. The chances are that your next door neighbor that you're talking to about the faith is not going to resort to mythology in arguing against your Christianity. It's not very likely that you have a neighbor that's going to say, I can't believe all these myths in the Bible because I've got my own myth, thank you. Most modern dualists haven't even asked themselves the question, how do I get the two things unified in one worldview? And so you do an internal critique of the unbeliever system. Materialism won't work. It destroys the preconditions of rationality. The preconditions of rationality can't be saved under dualism because dualism is arbitrary and incoherent. And that leaves only one option, if you're not going to be a Christian, is that you have to have an alternative religious worldview. We say God's the answer to all this. God created the physical world out of nothing. It's God's mind that's the basis for the laws of logic. It's God's character that gives us the moral laws by which we live. So we have the preconditions of intelligibility within the Christian worldview. Somebody says, yes, well, why the Christian worldview? One of the questions that you want me to answer is, why does it have to be the Christian worldview? Why not just theism in general? Okay, you've asked, so I'm going to tell you. Because there isn't any such thing as theism in general. It can't be theism in general because there ain't anything like that. There's only particular versions of theism. Okay? Every version of theism, therefore, needs to be treated as its own particular kind of worldview.